Thanks. Good morning and good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're calling in from. You're welcome to the 17th open house session. It's a very exciting one. It's probably going to be the best. So you need to sit attentive and listen. And particularly because it has a very interesting topic, coaching, which you will see now as the X factor, but also can be called the human factor. And we will be discussing publication that Keetie will be speaking to us about, but also discussing some of the experiences with countries using coaching, which is a very important aspect in economic inclusion programs. And we shall be unpacking various aspects of it. Now, just a quick housekeeping rules. If I'm speaking in English and you're not following, please note there is Spanish and French translation. You'll just need to click on the interpretation globe down by the bar on the end. And the chat is open. We will keep reminding you to drop in any comments or questions as they come. We are also recording the session, as you might have seen. We hope that's okay with you. Keep dropping in any questions and comments that you might have on the chat as they come. Although we will also have a time at the end to have a discussion and for you to ask some questions to the panelists. And with that, as you join the call, kindly drop in your name, title, organization, agency, just so we can be able to track who is attending the call. Otherwise, you're welcome. And we are starting in just a minute from now. All right, so just to get us started, a quick reminder, translation is right down there in case you need it on the globe. I would like us to just begin with a quick framing by Keetie Roelen, who has developed a publication that I have been able to read and I'm found very exciting, and I'm sure that you'll be very keen to look at it afterwards. She'll provide for us the initial framing for this discussion, and then we'll go over to the panelists and a discussant and close with a discussion. Over to you, Keetie.
Thank you very much, Rita, and for setting the expectations high as well as making this the most interesting open house yet. So let's see if we can meet those expectations or live up to them. So thank you very much for joining this discussion today about coaching, the X factor. And it's really an honor to be presenting today because this is, as Rita mentioned, on the back of a paper that I wrote together with my co-author, Shiloni Shmantharan, who is also in the audience today, which is a review of a coaching in economic inclusion programs. It's an in-practice paper, which will be out as we are going through this open house and soon after. And I'm really happy to be giving you a sneak preview into this. So if we go to the first slide of this presentation, when we set out to develop this paper, our initial goal was actually to develop some sort of typology of coaching models or modalities within economic inclusion programs. So we wanted to review current practice, and we thought we could set out different models and then see their benefits and challenges, as well as their differential impacts. Now, as we started reviewing the coaching practices in these different programs, we soon found out that's not really possible. There are many different ways in which coaching is implemented, and it isn't possible to find different models or typologies as such. Instead, what we did is we looked at different design parameters, so different aspects of coaching that can range from low intensity or narrower focus to higher intensity and a wider focus. And for each of these parameters, we've looked at 30 programs across more than 21 countries to gain an overview of what they look like, to discuss their benefits and challenges and the considerations and trade-offs, but also to reflect on implications for going to scale, and especially also cost effectiveness, which is, of course, a big question for many in the audience, and as we are talking about bringing economic inclusion to scale. So if we go to the next slide, it has an overview of the different design parameters that are included in the paper. And in the paper, there are lots of different examples of how these parameters differ and how they're implemented. But let me talk you through the various parameters and what they are. to give you an indication of where we find the biggest differences when it comes to different approaches to coaching and how they're implemented. So first of all, there's a scope of coaching, and that really refers to the topics or the themes that are addressed in coaching components. And that can range from quite narrow technical support to enhance economic outcomes, to much more wider focus on broader welfare elements within the household, such as including or enhancing gender equality. There's not necessarily a linear progression in these, but we can see that some programs are much more narrowly focused, which of course requires less resources, and other programs sits more towards the wider and more resource intensive side of the spectrum. The second design parameter is depth of support, and that refers to the level of support offered by coaches. Again, this can range from less intense to more intense, less focused to more focused. So for example, there can be follow-up on training that's been provided. This is at the more narrow end, but there can also be quite in-depth tailored support, mediation, for example, in case of conflicts, or coaching in case people run into issues. Again, this is not necessarily a linear progression from very narrow support into more in-depth support. There are different components that can be layered on top of each other, and we found that different programs do this in different ways. The third parameter is type of support, and this is a little bit more straightforward. This essentially refers to whether support is provided at the individual level, at group level, or a combination of individual and group level. And certainly quite a few programs experiment with that combination, also to make things most cost effective. The fourth parameter is level of engagement or frequency. So as the word says, it refers to how often coaches engage with clients in the program, which in the programs we looked at ranges from anything less than every 2 months, so quite infrequent, to really quite frequent, which is about every week. The fifth parameter is relevant in terms of caseload. So that really refers to the number of clients per coach. And here we also found quite a range, from more than 100 households per coach to less than 25 per coach. Now, I should say that most of the programs we looked at were in the 50 to 75 clients per coach caseload. And there were various models that either adopted coaching elements that had far fewer clients per coach, especially when there's a lot of individual coaching. And then when you move more towards group training or group coaches, then the caseload can increase quite a bit. But on either end of the spectrum, that was a minority of the programs. The sixth design parameter is in relation to staffing, and we'll see in a moment that that's a big parameter. So that's around the profile of coaches, what kind of education they have, what kind of employment arrangements they have, and really what kind of job they're supposed to do in relation to coaching. A lot of different considerations there. And finally, coaching tools, and this refers to what the coaches use in the field in their interaction with clients, which can be no formal tools at all, although that's an exception, to more standard paper copy manuals, and increasingly more digital tools being used by coaches to support their interaction with clients, as well as sometimes by clients themselves. So this is on integrated end of the spectrum. So if we go to the next slide, that refers to what we've done in our paper, we look at some of the overall recommendations. There's quite a few recommendations in the paper, but I pulled out a few that cut across some of the design parameters that I think are also useful for the conversation today. First of all, it's really important. In terms of the design parameters, it's the parameter that we spend most words on, most time discussing, because it's so integral to the components. And so it's really vital for any coaching and a program to carefully consider the profiles of coaches, the educational requirements when they are recruited. Should they be community coaches, government workers, or external coaches, for example? but also to have in place training mechanisms, support mechanisms that allow them to do their job well, and so they stay motivated throughout. And they also feel a sense of agency to be able to respond to clients' needs. A lot of questions around how to do this effectively, and of course, at reasonable cost. The second recommendation is in reference to digital technology, and it's a two-sided recommendation, really, as is often the case with the use of digital tools. On the one hand, we found there's really exciting initiatives, and so there's definitely scope and need for it to be explored, especially in terms of the tools that coaches can use for coaching, and putting some of the apps in clients' hands for things to become more demand-driven. But at the same time, we also found throughout the review that it can never be a replacement for the human interaction, because that's where a lot of the magic, if you will, in that X factor happens. The third recommendation refers to caseloads. And of course, this is a big challenge. We have a large client base that we want to reach and that we want to support. But we also found that there is often a tendency to overload caseloads, meaning that coaches struggle, they can become demotivated. And it also makes it more difficult to engage families and support them with their needs and the requirements that they would have to make best use of the program. So keeping caseloads manageable and finding ways of combining group and individual coaching, for example, is crucial. And finally, a thought on exploring innovative options for funding, which of course relates to the question about cost effectiveness and sustainability. And we saw a few examples of programs looking at novel ways of trying to do this, for example, through self-funding, taking some of the interest on savings within rotating savings groups, for example, to fund some of the coaching elements. And I think there's scope here to explore more. And then finally, before handing over to some of the program examples where you can hear a lot more in depth, some reflections on the way forward. And they're two main reflections, really. And this is on the next slide, if you can put it up. First of all, and this might be obvious by what I've said by now, but there is no clear blueprint, ideal model or ideal models, or even a simple menu of options. I think I speak on behalf of both Sheila and myself when I say we were quite overwhelmed by the various different permutations of different modalities and the way in which they're implemented, and also how programs adapt to realities over time. So very often it's the case, it might start off in one way, and of course programs adapt to changing needs and contexts. And so that means that decisions about coaching very much depend on the objectives the programs try to meet, the context and how that's changing, of course, resources, but very much also participants' needs. And in terms of all those 4 points, sometimes the latter point might be most difficult to respond to because needs are very diverse, and really responding to them in a tailored way is very resource intensive. And then finally, something that I'm sure we'll also hear about from Nate today is that there's a lot of interest in coaching. There are a lot of evaluations about the coaching element or how coaching is integrated in economic inclusion. But actually, when you look at the evidence, it's rather scarce or sparse. We have some evidence around group versus individual coaching, but the evidence is mixed. And again, it really depends on context, objectives, and participants' needs. So we do need a lot more, particularly in going to scale. And that also refers to cost effectiveness. We have found it difficult to really find information about cost effectiveness of coaching in different programs. And in part, that's because it's hard to get our hands on cost data. So for those of you in the audience who are part of programs and implementation, please think about how to make that data available so we can actually pull out some of that information for the benefit of everybody in this community. Let me leave it there. Thank you, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thanks so much, Keetie. And I think you've given us a challenge. Most people must be on the call thinking about where do we fit? Are we on the lower end, on the upper end? And I'm sure I know one of the questions that many people think about quite a bit when it comes to coaching is the caseload, the depth, and how much to use digital tools and not to, recognizing, of course, the recommendations you're making. Now, without further ado, we are going to be going through, if you just joined the call, you're welcome. It's going to be the most exciting open house session on coaching, an interesting factor. And Keetie just gave us a framing of a publication that has been done. It will be provided to you after the call. And so look forward to that. All the presentations will be shared, so don't worry. This is also being provided to you on the call. I'll take just a little moment to introduce Sarah Mishu, who is a Livelihood Enhancement Manager, Productive Social Net Program with the government of Tanzania. She'll be speaking in English, and she will share with us lessons and challenges learned running a program that is entirely led by the Tanzanian Social Action Fund, TASAF, a government organization. So again, here we get to hear an experience of government. And so, Claudia, we could move over to Sarah's presentation. You're welcome, Sarah.
Okay, so thank you very much, Rita, for introducing me. As I'm already introduced, my name is Sarah. I'm the Livelihood Enhancement Manager from Tanzania, working with TASAF. TASAF is a government institution implementing Productive Social Safety Net Program, which is poverty-targeted program covering all the villages in our country. First slide, Claudia. Yes, so like I said, it covers all the villages in our countries, and already we have covered about 1.3 million households. And the program by itself is a demand-driven program, and it has a main 3 components, which is conditional cash transfer, public work, and livelihood enhancement. The program is nationally designed, but is also implemented through the government structure, which I'll be able to share. So one of the components of this program, like I've mentioned, is livelihood enhancement, which this component, it has 2 sub-components, which is basic livelihood support and livelihood enhancement, enhanced livelihood. And in the basics, the livelihood support, actually, it covers all the beneficiaries who have the labor capacity, and mostly here the focus is on saving promotion. So it's focused more on formation of groups, helping the beneficiaries to form groups, and also in more of self-employment and wage employment opportunities. That's also we're doing the basic livelihood support. But when it comes to enhanced livelihood support, here you find that it's not all the beneficiaries are benefiting in this. This one has its own targeted structure, because this subcomponent, it provides a comprehensive set of livelihood activities, including the productive grant. So it takes only the beneficiaries. It started with the geographical targeting, which it's focused more on the beneficiaries in 44, we call them PAIs, project areas of authority, or another one, the districts, whereby in those districts, the ones who are eligible to receive this productive grant, these are the ones with the labor capacity, but also they must have been participated in the public work, because the livelihood enhancement is just a door to graduation. So we need people to have already participated public work, already trying to have an accumulation of assets, so that when they receive the grants, it will be able for them to be able to somehow gradually improve and come out of the program. So livelihood enhancement in this subcomponent, we've already, of course, targeted a number of them, and most of this is more than 85% are women receiving both components. So, and in coaching component in the first phase, originally we used the mixed 3 coaching and mentoring methodology. There's a regular visits, which we did, household visit, plot demonstration, monthly group coaching by extension staff, supported by community management committees, which in short we are calling CMC. So here the message really we giving them is aim to support the beneficiaries within the implementation of their business plans. We're trying to guide them on what they've already choose to implement and try to make sure that they implement according to their business plans. So in the first phase, there's some lessons which we have also learned. We mostly rely on the existing station services. The program was not always able to, of course, resolve the issues of staffing, like the first presenter have already said. And also there was an issue of COVID. So somehow this component was also delayed in terms of starting to implement. Next slide. Claudia? Okay, so in the next phase, which now is productive social safety 2, which we are implementing now, we somehow did a number of changes in the livelihood component. So in the areas of coaching, the design program influenced the scalability. By first, we decided to reduce the caseload because we had targeted to reach about 200,000 beneficiaries productive grant, but we decided to reduce the number with, of course, now with a coach or percentage ratio of 1 coach for 10 to 100 participants, depending on local conditions, just like the conditions the first presenter said, the proximity, the issues of proximity, the issues of caseload, the issue of staffing. So it makes that range. But also what we also focus on, we started to do coaching on group coaching during the plan preparation, but we also mixed with individual follow-up visits. Also, but another thing which we had learned from the first phase and we thought we should do it now, we shortened the process of disbursement, because at first we were using we are providing productive grant in 2 installments. So we decided to bring it into 1 installment. So we just give it the whole amount once, which of course is 350,000 shillings. I have to check it how much is going to be in dollars. So now we decided to give only 1 installment, that I mean the whole amount with first 1 installment, so that it's shortened the process. But also there was a use of CMC, community member committees, which also really helped the extension officers to reach the beneficiaries on the support of coaching. So it's something which is on the early, we just started, and we are hoping to see a lot of improvement. But the observations now, it's very encouraging in terms of business plans, and also the implementation is doing very well to some of the beneficiaries. Yeah, next. So moving forward, looking at the challenges, good practice and lesson learned. So of course, the trade-offs and challenge of the design. For us, this is a government program, and we are using the government structure in implementing it. That is, extension officers are the ones which we are using to implement our program. As much as it's give us the benefit of scaling it up, since we are using the government officials, we don't pay them salaries. We just give a little incentives like per diem and all that, but also it has challenges, like I've already mentioned, on the limitation of these staffs. We don't have many. Some issues are difficult to resolve, you know, because since this is about the government staff and the budgets issues. But we have also seen that the role of CMC, these community member committees, because these are the ones at the community, they are elected by the village assemblies, and these are part of the design of the program. We saw that these are becoming more prominent to be able to provide adequate support to the program, because these are the ones close to beneficiaries, and they visit the beneficiaries more frequently and also give the feedback to extension officers who are the technical people now to provide more technical support according to what the feedback has been provided by the CMC. But also another good practice which we have seen, the business plans and the implementation is not bad for the beneficiaries who have been coached after receiving the productive grant, especially in the areas of agriculture, and that is crop and animals. They're doing very well. So clear coaching plans with regular coaching visit, also timely implementation leading to better results, because at first it was taking from the training to providing grant, it was taking so long in the phase 1, but now the time has been shortened up, and also it gives more positive results. Also, the next steps for this program, of course, we're expecting next year, we complete our evaluation and see how much are we faring on this one, but also we planning for the next phase to work on the livelihood enhancement design, based, of course, on the evaluation result. And we expect that we really need to design or to really put emphasis or come up with a good structure on how we can make our extension officers more accountable. Of course, we still need them because we are going to use them. How they can better planning, coach, and accountable of their coaching and mentorship. But also of course, we need to incentivize more CMC, because we have seen these community member committee staff are really good at their work, and they're really helping the beneficiaries. And so we think we really need how to incentivize them and use more on the next phase, but more attention needed also on going on capacity building in relation to coaching and mentoring of the frontline, which are the extension officers. At the moment we train them, but again, like we said, these are the government officers, a lot of priority, but we think we need also to build their capacity more so that they'll be able to give the right messages to our beneficiaries according to the business plans they have. I think that's all for me, Claudia. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rita.
Thanks so much, Sarah. That was very insightful. I liked especially the part where you are adapting. I think learning from the previous period and then deciding to adapt and change caseloads. I noticed that there are struggles, of course, there are challenges with incentives. Mm-hmm. Appreciating that you have very big numbers and it's government scale. So it's important to remember these pieces when we think about the questions we'll be asking you. Yeah. And I also liked the introduction of a community member committee. I think that's a very helpful point, especially if you're struggling with caseloads and coaching is not forthcoming with individual or group coaching. So I'm sure there'll be many questions coming to that. Let's see if quick reminders again. If you have any questions, drop them on the chat. We just listened to Sarah from Tanzania. We will be going back to Chad, to Florence, who will speak to us about another government program in Chad. We had started, but then we had some translation issues. And as we go back, do drop your questions. When Florence starts to present, you will need to use the globe to turn the translation on to whatever language, French or Spanish, from English. And yeah. Florence, Claudia, are we ready?
Merci de m'avoir donné la parole. Moi, c'est Florence Derry, comme ils m'ont déjà présenté. Je n'ai pas encore à me représenter. Je dis bonsoir à toutes et à tous. Merci à Aline et à Claudia de m'avoir permis de faire partie de cette panel. Tout de suite, je vais commencer ma présentation. OK. Le Tchad, depuis plus de 25 ans, connaît un afflux de réfugiés sur son territoire, les réfugiés venus des pays voisins, et la présence prolongée de ces réfugiés sur le territoire tchadien crée une pression supplémentaire sur les ressources naturelles et cela affecte vraiment les populations hôtes. Pour résoudre ce problème-là, le gouvernement de la République du Tchad a adopté une stratégie nationale de protection sociale en 2016 et a mis en place un projet pilote de filets sociaux pour réduire la pauvreté dans 2 zones d'intervention. les bénéficiaires qui sont les bénéficiaires de ces mesures sont 6200 sont identifiés parmi les plus pauvres. Et ces bénéficiaires on a versé 75 $ à ces bénéficiaires pendant 2 ans. Les mesures d'accompagnement productif légers ont été administrées à 2000 bénéficiaires parmi ces bénéficiaires des transferts monétaires pendant 3 mois. Et les résultats d'évaluation impact ont été concluants. Donc, avec une amélioration du bien-être des populations, des bénéficiaires et une augmentation de la consommation. Par rapport à la mise en œuvre, nous avons eu à mettre en place 5 mesures qui sont entre autres la formation de groupes et coaching, les banques de table, la formation en micro-entrepreneuriat, la facilitation de l'accès au marché des intrants et la subvention de 75 $. Toujours les bonnes pratiques par rapport à la phase pilote. Nous avons des coachs qui sont formés en 6 jours plus 2 jours de suivi post-formation par l'ONG Triple Up. Selon les zones, chaque coach a environ 7 à 12 banques de table à sa charge et le coaching de groupe est fait durant toute la durée du projet, alors que le coaching individuel se fait sur rendez-vous au domicile des bénéficiaires. Il faut noter que le coaching a été cumulé à l'accès au marché des intrants parce que c'est de courte durée. Les effets positifs du coaching sont l'amélioration des AGR des bénéficiaires, l'identification des besoins en intrants et l'accompagnement des achats groupés. Il y a le coaching individuel avec les bénéficiaires participant peu à l'épargne des banques de table et nous avons aussi la désignation des personnes ressources pour l'accompagnement post-projet. Comme défi, le coaching individuel est assez peu pratiqué et structuré faute de temps. Le coaching de groupe, très développé, mais axé sur le marché des intrants, et le coaching est considéré comme une activité à part entière et non comme une phase d'accompagnement. Vu toutes ces situations, le gouvernement a décidé d'aller en échelle avec le projet d'appui aux réfugiés et communautés d'accueil PARCA, où PARCA est mis en œuvre dans 3 provinces au bénéfice de 29 170 bénéficiaires. Les mesures d'accompagnement productif ont été mises en œuvre en 12 mois. Comme programme réalisé dans les mesures d'accompagnement, nous avons eu à mettre en œuvre les 4 mesures qui sont entre autres la communication de projets mobilisation communautaire, la constitution et fonctionnement des AVEC qui sont les associations villageoises d'épargne et crédit, la formation en compétences de vie et micro-entrepreneuriat et la subvention productive. Le coaching étant considéré comme un processus d'accompagnement transversal. Il permet d'assurer la continuité entre les mesures et leur compréhension. Les coachs dans le cadre du PARCA sont appelés accompagnateurs des ONG. Ils ont été formés en 5 jours, puis le suivi post-formation. Chaque accompagnateur a environ 6 groupes avec à sa charge et les AVEC ont démarré, le coaching a démarré depuis le début du projet jusqu'à la fin, alors que le coaching individuel débute à partir de la formation en compétences de vie et micro-entrepreneuriat. Je vous présente maintenant le chronogramme de mise en œuvre du coaching. Vous voyez que le chronogramme est dégressif. Le coaching commence d'abord par la phase intensive. Le coaching est fait durant toutes les semaines. Et la seconde phase, c'est la phase de développement où on fait le coaching 1 semaine sur 2. Et la phase de maturité où on fait le coaching 1 fois par mois. Il faut noter aussi que le projet a fait beaucoup d'efforts pour mettre en place des manuels et des guides imagés, l'utilisation des tablettes par les accompagnateurs, la conception des outils de qualité du coaching, plus le suivi, les fiches de suivi du coaching de groupe et coaching individuel. Comme effet positif du coaching, le coaching permet une bonne compréhension du projet, une transmission des formations au groupe et le coaching favorise vraiment l'amélioration de la solidarité et la cohésion sociale entre les membres. Le coaching individuel permet aussi aux bénéficiaires de développer leur AGR et de résoudre certains problèmes domestiques. Le coaching permet aux membres de la famille de se réconcilier et autres. Il faut noter aussi que l'augmentation, l'ouverture d'esprit et le respect des autres, la confiance en soi sont aussi donnés par le coaching, grâce au coaching. En absence du coaching, l'exemple du Logone oriental, le coaching, on avait connu un retard et en l'absence du coaching, c'était difficile que les gens mobilisent les épargnes et les crédits. Donc, on a vu que le coaching a vraiment une importance capitale dans la mise en œuvre. Comme défi du coaching, il y a le problème de ratio uniforme du nombre de groupes par accompagnateur, ne prenant pas en compte la dispersion géographique. Il y a le manque de clarté sur la modalité de mise en œuvre de coaching individuel. Il y a l'insuffisance de prise en compte des aspects sociaux, émotionnels. Il y a l'insuffisance aussi des formations et de suivi post-formation. Comme recommandation, nous avons répertorié quelques recommandations. On a dit ne pas imposer les ratios standards au groupe parce que, compte tenu de la dispersion géographique. Comme deuxième recommandation, nous avons dit qu'il faut former le personnel accompagnant avant la mise en œuvre du projet pour qu'il puisse adopter la posture du coach. Aussi, en 3, nous avons décidé de poursuivre le coaching après la formation et le cycle des AVEC et après l'octroi de la subvention. Décider aussi d'adapter davantage le coaching aux besoins spécifiques des bénéficiaires, tels que au contexte d'insécurité et de conflit. Décider aussi, on propose aussi comme recommandation de s'assurer que les accompagnateurs maîtrisent les opportunités économiques des zones pour pouvoir mieux accompagner les bénéficiaires dans leur AGR. Merci pour votre attention.
Thank you, Florence. And I think it was worth the wait, waiting for the presentation. I think what I pick just very quickly, there were many important points in your presentation, but one of them is the differentiation between group and individual coaching and what kind of effects they each might have. In the sense that if you're doing group coaching, you're going to advance many of the group-related effects, participation, for instance, while instead if you do individual coaching, you're going to affect certain things like social norms or relationships at home. And we'll get back to you with a number of questions, I'm sure. So thanks for those initial thoughts. Sarah, as we move on to our next panelist, Arunava, I would just like you to answer 2 questions as we get started with Arunava. So Sarah, just get back on the screen quickly and answer these 2 questions, which are beaming in our slides. People think that, I think based on the slide you presented, you're seeing improvements based on the adaptations you made on coaching, but there are a few questions related to it. The coaching themes, how do you choose? Which specific themes are you using for coaching? What do the coaches speak about? And how do you choose that content? And then for the community management committees, are you paying them as well? And if so, how much? And lastly, how are you tracking the coaching sessions? Those were actually 3. So over to you, Sarah, as we get ready to move on to Arunava. Sarah, you might be muted. Yes. Yeah.
So thank you very much, Rita. So again, the themes, of course, it depends on the nature of the business the beneficiaries have, because we know our beneficiaries in our country, most of them are in agriculture, government, agriculture, small business and all that. So we all know what are they going to, range or implementing there. So those areas is whereby we have different themes in terms of supporting, and then our extension officers are based on those areas. These are most of the agriculture extension officers, livestock, and all that. So the coaching now to be more on the guidance on their business plan, on what they have chosen. So if the extension officer, if the beneficiaries maybe is implementing a certain agriculture project, then the extension officer, it's really responsibility will be like looking at what is implementing, what had been saying the business plan, and guide accordingly and give the technical expertise with that person has. So it depends with what they have chosen, and of course the expertise of extension officers are the ones who are going to use it. Yes, the CMCs or the extension officers, we are paying them, and of course for CMC to range to about for a month it's about $25 while the extension officers range about $100 per month. So this is more of the per diem, which of course encompasses with the transport and all that. I don't remember the third question.
Yeah, we'll get back to the third one. You can think about it. It was about tracking, how you're tracking the coaching section. But we'll get back to you on that. So let me just introduce Arunava. Thanks, Sarah. Arunava is going to give us a new direction to this conversation, listening into him from the NGO side. So World Vision's experience. He's going to share about World Vision's experience, sharing global learnings from World Vision and how they've been using coaching in Bangladesh. Arunava is the Deputy Director, Integrated Technical Program Development, World Vision. You're welcome, and over to you.
Thanks, Rita, and welcome you all. In my presentation, already Rita introduced myself, so I'm not going to introduce myself again. So I'm going to directly to the presentation. So next slide, please. So as I'm representing World Vision, so I would like to give brief overview of the World Visions. World Vision is basically child-focused and advocacy organizations, and our aim is to tackling poverty and the injustice. Particularly, we work for the well-being for the children, and our programming is basically on multi-sectoral programming to tackle the multidimensional challenges of poverty. And these sectors include education, child protection, health, and livelihoods. And we have also some cross-cutting elements of our programming all over the world, that is gender equity and social inclusion, faith and developments. And we basically focus on the fragile context, and currently we are operating in nearly 100 countries through 6 regions. And among these 100 countries, about 15 to 16 countries, we are implementing ultra-poor graduation program concentrated in Asia and Africa. And this is a different context you can imagine. So, and if we segregate this context, is basically in urban, and some are urban, peri-urban, and some are rural context. Mostly we were as in Asian context, most of the poor people concentrated in rural areas, although we have significant number of poor people in urban areas, but our programming is concentrated in rural areas. And this coaching methodology it depends on based on this context, but the main pillar of ultra-poor graduation remain same all over the world, and that is the 4 pillars of social protection, livelihood promotion, financial inclusion, and social empowerment of the poor and extreme poor people. So now I'm going to focus on the Bangladesh programming. It is a countrywide programming. Next slide, please. So we are covering in our current cycle, covering 33,000, more than 33,000 participants in 39 locations all over the country. So we call it Ultra Poor Graduation Program in Bangladesh. It's actually funded through our sponsorship program. We have another set of programming of Ultra Poor that is implemented through grants fund programming, but I am concentrating currently in the sponsorship programming. And we select the people, households who are national poverty line. Beside this, selection indicator, we have another considering factor of inclusion, that is disability. Definitely, as we are child-focused organization, we consider the households who have children, and also we consider the ethnic minorities and the people who are not availing the basic services. And we have found 97% of our participants are women. And we provide the coaching. It's a combination of group and individual interactions, and we have some definitely we have some contextual influence in our country programming as well. So when we design our program and design our coaching component and training, our consideration is economic opportunity and service facility, especially the social services available in that context. We also consider the participant experience and interests. Socio-economic and natural shock resilience is also our aim to address. Nutritional gap mitigation and also family cohesion and is also focused for sustainability. And as most of the participants of this program is women, women rights and empowerment is integral part of these contextualizations. Besides this coaching, we have interconnected component as well, which started with the context and assessment and targeting. Targeting is very crucial things for our investment. And we do also household visionings, asset transfer, which is followed by technical training. Financial inclusion is also another part, for especially particularly focusing on savings promotion. And finally, we graduate out our program participants through graduation assessment and providing arranging a graduation ceremony, which is basically to integrate them in mainstream development programming from ultra-poor conditions. So other stakeholders are engaged with that event. So next slide. So now I would like to focus on the X factors, that is coaching component particularly. So in Bangladesh, we call it confidence building session. Basically, beyond the technical training through for the asset transfer, we provide these confidence building sessions to change the to provide them some skills and change their mindset as they can cope up with the local socio-economic situation and came out from the poverty situation. These sessions actually basically composed of some social and economic factor, mostly social. And as we do asset transfer and engage them with different economic activities, economic session is also there. And this session is basically we do in a fortnightly basis, 2-hour sessions, considering the other engagement of our participants. And we covered, currently we are covering 13 topics. That's mean and these are all mandatory sessions, any ultra-poor who enroll in this program. And it takes about 6 to 7 months to covering all those sessions fortnightly basis in a group. Beside this group session, we also provide, we believe and we understand that ultra-poor have their unique need. We also provide them individual coaching at their household level through household visit. So each of these topics again reviewed and also address the individual need based on these topics. Beside this, we also address other technical program issues during household visits, as well as also focus on their life skills individually. So, and we also did some revisions, and these revisions and engaging new sessions is based on the focusing on the resilience building and sustainability, which basically came out. You can see the celebrating families and household workload sharing, load sharing, which is basically incorporated with a viewpoint of sustainability and resilience building, because of economic and social progressions, they need to continue and also cope up with this different disastrous situations. So family cohesion is important element we have built in this confidence building sessions. Next slide. So what the new version of coaching and programming in Altapur programming currently in Bangladesh. So now we have fewer sessions. Previously, we have 18 sessions. So based on the lesson learned, and this lesson learned came out actually basically consulting with the participant community and also other stakeholders, as well as also streamlined our new country strategies. So fewer sessions, and we also introduced some tools, which is also consulting with our staffs. So these tools include flip chart. So it's IEC and BCC materials. Previously, this session was conducted based on some module and guideline. So now we have introduced a colorful tool. It's a manual. So staffs are now filled, and also and more interactive session can be offered through these learning sessions. We also introduced practical sessions with external expert. External expert means government service providers, extension service providers, and also private sectors. And sometimes they are also associated with these practical sessions. And we also engage other family members. We are not focusing particularly on individuals. We are focusing on the family members. So that is another part we have added in this new version of programming. We also have community citizen voice and action approaches to ensure the government's services, and also sensitize the government service provider as they can be pro-poor in providing services. We also added household visioning. It's a bit different than the graduation. Graduation is a time bound, but visioning is for a particular is for a long term. So all the members of the household, they are engaged in this household visioning, as they have some solid vision beyond their socioeconomic improvement. And we have also, we do, as I mentioned earlier, we do graduation assessment. We aligned our assessment with this coaching component. So all the training and coaching we are provided. So after 2 years of graduation, we measures all those components with 10 graduation indicators, measurement indicators, and we rate them in their graduation setting. And these programming changes actually help us to and strategy help us to reduce the graduation period. It helped to cover more Altapur participants. So previously we had 3 years graduation program. Now we have 2 years, and our participants are now able to contribute in this program as per their economic ability and social opportunities. That cost sharing approach has been introduced based on the local economic situations. And this coaching also helped to integrate with this Altapur family, to integrate with other environmental movement like eco-village movement. They also doing different entrepreneur, which is climate sensitives and climate sensitive agriculture as well. Next slide, please. So we have also particularly some lesson learned on those changes, particularly in asset transfer programming, which we solely depends on the vendor to provide different assets. Now Altapur people, they are with that coaching and training, and also individual support, and now they are able to procure their own asset, and they also have shown their ability to tap local resources and explore local solutions for having this asset and maintaining these assets, and also do their business entrepreneurial skills. They also shown they have ability, because World Vision has actually sending this money for asset procurement through mobile financial services. They have shown their capacity to access mobile financial services, which was not explored previously, and this opportunity was not available 5 or 10 years back. So reduction of investment is also our lesson learned, which also increase our coverage. So finally, I would like to say the next improvement of coaching. Coaching is not, it can be considered an X factor, but it's not a static factor. So that's why World Vision is very much exploited to local economic and social opportunities. especially for the participant, because the global and regional economic scenario changing rapidly. So that assessment is very important for designing the coaching. And globally, World Vision International is doing different research, especially in the displacement settings. And this is actually continuing effort from World Vision to improve better services for the ultra poor. So we have in next slides we have some resources. If you are interested, you can know more about global ultra poor graduation programming of World Vision, and also the different practices of ultra poor graduation program here in Bangladesh. So this is end from my presentation. Thank you, Rita.
Thanks so much, Arunava. I noticed that you generated a lot of questions on the chat, and I'm hoping we will have a chance to be able to respond to them. Also, while we are going over the next discussion, you could try to answer some of the questions as you can. But I'll just throw two questions over to both of you as we move on to the last discussion. One of which I think many people want to know what your graduation rates are. They also want to know your coach participant ratio. Those are two big questions. And I think you've been clear that there is a structured coaching approach, and the targeting is women, but at the same time, you're involving family in some of the sessions. So people are curious to know from you how you are involving males in the targeting, while at the same time, it's mainly women. I think this is a similar question for Sarah regarding the 85% targeting of women, but at the same time, how to involve family. So Arunava, you could answer that. Florence, there will be one question for you around the ambitions of the program, and I'll get back to you on that. So just Arunava, these three questions. Florence on the ambitions, and then we will go to Nathanael.
Thanks, Rita. It's a very interesting question. First of all, we have different sessions, and we engage male members in particular session, not in all the sessions. So you can see the list of the sessions. So some session is important, like workload sharing at household level. So it's not mandatory, but we keep our gate open so other members can be associate, especially for the adolescent girls. They can include in the our gender awareness sessions. So these are the particular sessions we try to engage our other family members, the male participants as well. And we have also, you have seen another component of household visioning. That is the actually household approach, not the individual approach. So during household visioning, all the adult members can participate in that session, and also the school-going children as well. And the caseload, basically, we covered 70 to 90 participant per staff. So it's based on the number of UPZ household we are covering, but averagely it's 70 and 90. So Rita, can you help me? Another questions, but I just forget.
Graduation rate.
Yeah, graduation rate. Interestingly, graduation rate is I have said we have two types of programming. One is a sponsorship programming, and we have measured it is about 96%, and we have some grants fund programming that rate is near about 93 to 95%. We have two particular graduation programs through grants fund, and that measurement has been done by both internal and external evaluator. So the rate is almost close to one is 91%, another is 95%, almost over 90%. So any other pressing questions?
I think that would be all for now, Florence. Maybe just quickly on the ambitions of the program in chat. Thanks so much, Arunava. It was very informative.
Thank
Florence,
you.
over
Thank
to you.
you.
Yeah. Florence. Florence, if you can hear me, the question is, what are the ambitions of the program? Given how much you've done, the scale, and where you're going, what are your new ambitions? And I think for the rest of us who may not speak French, you can go to the globe and to go to English. Thank you.
OK. Bon, pour le programme du Tchad, l'ambition, vu l'expérience qui a été mise en œuvre depuis le pilote, la première phase de PARCA, et puis l'étude qualitative sur les dynamiques d'inclusion sociale, puis le travail d'analyse d'adaptation qui est en cours, l'ambition du Tchad, c'est d'aller toujours de l'avant, d'aller à l'échelle avec les 4 zones d'intervention qui sont au niveau de l'Est et du Sud du Tchad. Donc, nous allons intervenir dans 4 provinces additionnelles où il y a les conflits, il y a les réfugiés. Nous allons aussi intervenir auprès de 33 000 bénéficiaires, hein, où on aura 30% des réfugiés et 30% des communautés d'accueil. Et nous allons mettre un paquet en cours de définition. Nous sommes en train de préparer un paquet qui est en cours pour pouvoir mettre en œuvre durant ces deuxième échelle-là au niveau du Tchad. C'est ça un peu l'ambition au niveau du Tchad, là où nous voulons aller. Je ne sais pas si je réponds vraiment à la question ou bien je n'ai pas très bien compris la question. Si vous pouvez, si ce n'est pas ça, vous pouvez repréciser un peu la question. OK.
Yes, very, very clear, Florence. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. So moving on to Nathanael, I have been saving you for the last. You have a very important role, as you might imagine, as a discussant. And Nathanael is a senior director, sector programming at Innovations for Poverty Action. Some of you might know this as IPA. IPA is celebrated for research and learning, very rigorous research, and he's in the active middle of all this stuff and listening to all the discussions from government, from the NGO, but also the initial framing that we had from Keetie. We would like to hear from you, your initial thoughts and what you're seeing globally around these themes. So over to you, Nathanael.
Thanks very much, Rita, and great to be with you today. I really enjoyed these examples shared by the presenters, and I like the typology of the scope and depth of coaching support that Keetie presented, starting from boosting income generation and livelihood diversification, and then adding supports on a spectrum, from building financial literacy to soft skills like life skills and self-confidence, to human development outcomes like nutrition and health, and onto addressing social and cultural norms like gender equality. One of the themes that came up a number of times in the presentations is adapting the coaching to the local context, which makes sense. When I think about PEI's area of focus, which is multifaceted interventions to support economic inclusion, I often have 2 pieces of evidence in my mind. The first is cash transfers, in particular the lump sum cash grants of the kind delivered by Give Directly. Those are the benchmark I believe we should be beating through the process of delivering targeted, multifaceted programs with the range of supports needed by the ultra-poor to build resilience and move out of extreme poverty. A few years ago, we worked with Munshi Suleiman, who compared the impacts of cash grants to graduation programs and to a broad set of livelihood development programs. And we found that cash had the highest return on investment. But when we limited the sample to programs that were targeted to the extreme poor and measured long-term impacts, graduation programs came out ahead. But one of the biggest takeaways from that research was that more evidence was needed on the long-term impact of cash grants for the extreme poor. Now, some of you may have seen the recent results from the first 2 years of Give Directly's 12-year universal basic income experiment in Kenya. The impacts from the communities that received lump sum transfers are in some ways especially strong compared to the communities selected to receive long-term transfers and those who received monthly installments. In contrast, the piece of evidence that I find most powerful in making the case for multifaceted interventions is what we called goat drops in Ghana. That's where, in the context of the impact evaluation we did of the first graduation program in northern Ghana, GUP, where households receive the typical mix of graduation components, including consumption support, assets, training, savings, and coaching. We also selected some households to receive only the assets with none of the complementary supports. those households who were just as poor and vulnerable as other GUP participants had a truck pull up to their house, which dropped off several goats worth, I think, around $250. And when we followed up with these households 2 and 3 years later, we saw that while they had more goats, they had offset the amount of other livestock they owned. So they were no better off and they had no more assets or income than the control group. Now, I can't prove from that one study that it was a lack of coaching that led to this outcome, but that remains my suspicion, that if they'd had a bit more support and guidance, they could have turned that windfall into a lasting benefit. And yet, back to give directly, we can now clearly see that poor households in Kenya, when provided with $500 cash, are able to make good investments which produce lasting benefits after 2 years. So I'm not entirely sure how to reconcile these two pieces of evidence, except to say that we should always critically examine our assumptions and use new evidence to update our beliefs. We know that a simple, streamlined intervention can work, but that doesn't mean that additional components don't add value. But we need to ensure that they do add value to make sure we're getting a return on that additional investment. We can use comparative cost effectiveness and long-term measurement to identify the approaches that produce the largest impacts per dollar on the dimensions we care about. When we consider the broadest set of coaching supports, like we saw today, there are a number of nice examples showing the impact of holistic programming. For example, the analysis is in progress, but current results from our cognitive behavioral therapy evaluation Ghana showed strong impacts on mental health after 1 to 3 months, though the results do not seem to persist in the long run. Tara, Betty, Michael King, and Julia Viant's evaluation of the Umodzi Couples Counseling Program delivered as part of Concern Worldwide's graduation program in Malawi show that those who participated in the couples counseling program show the strongest economic outcomes. The Umodzi program aims to improve cooperation and shared vision and perceptions of the role of women, and savings and productive investment in efficient resource allocation within the household, at the same time aiming to decrease conflict within the household. Similarly, the Sahel Adaptive Social Protection Program included both life skills training delivered as group training, with topics including self-esteem, personal initiative, aspiration, social norms, and gender relations. And they did a community sensitization program on aspirations and social norms, by which they screened a video showing a couple working together to diversify their livelihoods, followed by a community discussion on aspirations and social norms. From the evaluation of the ASP program, we see that packages with psychosocial components, both the full program and the psychosocial only, were cost-effective 18 months after the intervention. And in our study with AVSI in Uganda, we tested versions of their graduation program, including the full version with individual coaching and a version with group coaching, and a group that received the program with coaching and all the other supports, but without the asset transfer. After around 30 months, we can see clearly that households do better with the asset transfer, but also that group coaching performs just as well as individual coaching and costs 13% less, which can enable the program to serve more households with the same resources. AVSI adopted that version of the program for the second cohort of the program. So that's a nice example of using rigorous evaluations to design and implement more cost-effective programs. I'll conclude by saying that I believe in the value of coaching, and we've seen some nice examples of that today. We need to learn more about how much support, coaching or otherwise, is needed for which types of households, especially when we know that the simplest possible intervention, cash, can produce lasting benefits. The good news is that as we embrace digital delivery of program components, the cost of adding many of these components should go way down, making the return on investment go up and the decision of whether to include them easier. So thanks for these excellent presentations, and please reach out with any opportunities to test program components as you scale up your programs.
Thanks so much, Nathanael. I think that's a good amount of research that's in front of us. I think there is a clear sense that there's a direction that coaching contributes. There is also some mixed feelings about it in certain studies, but I think your conclusion makes sense. I think let's examine the context better and see more of the studies. Perhaps it's about also the context and where the studies are being done. I know that for a fact on our own program, I know that you spoke about the movement towards group coaching. We do still do a few individual follow-ups just for the sake of individualized care, but certainly it's a cheaper modality to take group coaching, even when you're using very in-depth type coaching modules. So We do have just a few minutes to take in additional questions, and we have been answering them as they go on the chat. But let's see if we if there are some outstanding ones, and while because I know that for many of the questions these were answered, I will go to just put up your hand. Let me give a few people a chance. Maybe we take some 3 questions on the hand. If you could ask your questions in a summarized way, it would be very nice. That way we can be able to answer your questions. Let's go to Tesfaye first. Over to you. I hope I have said your name correctly. Tesfaye Wokine, you raised your hand. Okay.
Okay, sorry, I'm just coming. Thank you very much for the presentation, and I am really very much pleased to hear that. And I have 2 questions. One is on community management committee, which were mentioned in, I think it is in Tanzania, I think. So my question for that is, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go on. Yes.
Okay. So in that case, what is the role of this community management committee? Is it implementation or is it targeting? One. Second, with regard to graduation rates in Bangladesh, it's very exciting to have over 90% graduation. But my question for that is, what is the criteria for graduation? What criteria? Is that income-based or is that asset-based, or what is the criteria for that graduation? So I think those are the 2 questions I have. Thank you for that. Thank you. Over to you.
All right, great. I think we can just hear immediately from Arunava. Just speak about the criteria for graduation, and then for Sarah, you could speak about the CMCs and what their role is, especially in light that you also have coaches.
Yeah, thanks, Rita. So regarding graduation criteria, already some participant asked that question in the chat box and I replied. However, I am repeating it. So we have 10 criteria. This is not only include the income criteria, and there is social criteria as well. It includes the increase of asset, alternate livelihood options, income generating options. It also includes the food intake, number of meals, nutritious meal. It also includes stopping child marriage or sending their children to the school. They are using sanitary latrine, accesses different government and private services like that. Those 10 criteria, we have also 17 indicators to fulfilling those criteria to measuring that graduation status of individual. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much. Sarah?
Thank you very much. The Community Members Committee used both during the targeting and also the implementation of the program. And so they have different roles according to the components of the program. So in the public work, they have something to do, like, for example, the community procurements, that the CMC doing it, and the conditional, in the CCT also, they do have a role, but on the LOE, livelihood enhancement, it's more of a follow-up of the projects in relation to their business plan and reminding the beneficiaries of the importance of implementing them accordingly. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. There was a question about soft skills. I think that there's also a response on the chat. Yes, largely, if we were listening to Arunava, I think most of the examples he was providing there included some soft skills, but we also noticed I think from the chat that from most of the studied projects, there's a lot of soft skills. But should any of you would like to comment specifically about that, I think that would do. And then Sarah, while you're still on, could you say something about the female targeting and the measurement of your coaching sessions?
Yeah, okay, so actually we don't target females. The Productive Socialist program in Tanzania target the household, but the recipient of the benefits by design is a woman in the household. So in that household, there's a woman there, maybe a husband and wife and a woman there, then the woman will be the recipient of the benefit which is going to be given by the program. So automatically by design, you might find that even in the livelihood enhancement, in the serving groups, even in the productive grants, most of the ones receiving those benefits or participate in the groups are women. So that's why you find that a big percentage of this is women, since that is seen by the design of the program. Yeah, and on the measuring, of course, tracking of course, it's we're not doing that good. That's an area also we are supposed to look at, but of course we depends on the reports, but also the follow-up, the field visit follow-up, which we also do. And in the field visit, the beneficiaries have books, the textbooks, whereby whenever the extension officers visit that beneficiary, has to write something on that book, like the date, what was the advice, what did it find, and things like that. So whenever we do the follow-up, this is what we go and read the books on, what are the advice, how many times they have gone, and something like that. And plus the monthly report, that's what we used for tracking. But we look into more on how we can do even digital tracking if necessary. Maybe probably in the next phase, we'll be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Nathanael, there is this question about the studies that were done on group coaching. That could you clarify that there were no specific individual touch points while the studies were comparing group and individual coaching?
Well, you, of course, are the expert on that, and I think already kind of addressed that in your previous comment, which is that the option is there to do an individual touch point as needed. And as we kind of predicted, maybe as we were designing together that evaluation, we thought that this kind of hybrid model might be the most effective, where you could save the labor time, which is precious and expensive for the cases where they need it most. I think we could be thinking about that in terms of kind of institutionalizing some of it into a model, because as also came out in the paper being discussed today, there you could have a whole spectrum of adaptive coaching to focus on the households that need it most. So even with an individualized program, looking at the participants in graduation programs, you can see that some people start to thrive pretty quickly and others really need more support. And so a very rigid, I'm going to spend this many minutes with every household every week is probably not the optimal way to do the program. But figuring out from a management perspective, what is the way to kind of balance having the simplicity and giving people the support that they need could make a lot of sense. So maybe there's a kind of recipe for doing that with a lot of programs. But to answer the simple question, no, it doesn't kind of disallow contact with an individual household, and we do see the results sort of speak for themselves in terms of the costing, where saving 13% is quite a meaningful savings in terms of delivering programs, and I think we could even do a little bit higher than that in terms of the scaled version of the program.
Okay, and maybe just one, since you're on it, the cost effectiveness. I think people are wondering about whether you have any information on cost effectiveness of community facilitators receiving a stipend versus a staff on a salary, for instance. Have there been those comparisons, any studies on that?
I haven't seen that evaluated in particular. I can say that there are some programs, I believe BOMA and Village Enterprise, others can correct me if I'm wrong, that use a kind of mentor-led model, which would have a kind of a lower cost delivery. And so there hasn't been a kind of individual comparison between kind of staff and mentors from the community that I've seen, but it could be something that we could kind of pull out from looking at costing potentially of existing programs. And Keetie's hand is up. Maybe she has something to add about that.
Sounds good. I know that on our end, we are doing some work with Duke University, and we will be having some studies on coach types, coach stipends, coach. So that might be coming up soon. So I think people should be watching out. And maybe just one last comment as we move towards. I would like to hear from Florence. Just one quick question on Keetie. Yeah. Two last ones. Florence, one on inclusion. Could you say something about inclusion and how there was a question about how your programs are including different kinds of people? And then we move over to Keetie, who has raised her hand.
En effet, nous avons pris le temps de penser à tout cela. Notre projet, d'abord, les bénéficiaires sont les femmes. D'abord, quand bien même le chef de ménage qui a été identifié, c'est un homme, l'argent est remis à la femme. Parce que nous pensons que les hommes, par rapport à la femme, les femmes ont plus de capacités de bien gérer les sous. Donc, et quand une femme a quelque chose, elle pense d'abord à son enfant, elle pense à son mari. Donc, pour cette raison, déjà, nos transferts vont directement d'abord aux femmes. Et si la femme n'est pas là, peut-être on peut donner à l'homme. Mais si tant que la femme est là, c'est à la femme qu'on remet. Maintenant aussi, dans le cadre de mesures productives où nous avons mener les activités, aussi, on a dit être femme. La première condition, c'est être femme. Le premier critère, c'est être femme. D'abord pour faire les AGR. Donc, nous, on n'exclut pas les gens, même si c'est des handicapés, on voit la possibilité toujours que cette personne peut toujours faire l'activité d'une manière ou d'une autre. Okay. Elle peut se faire aider pour faire l'activité. Donc, on n'exclut pas les personnes handicapées.
Thanks, Florence. So maybe just, I'm concerned about our time, and I would like you to do a poll, but just moving on to Keetie. I see your hand is up, but at the same time, I'm aware that there were many questions that were rotating around the framing you made at the beginning, so it would be good for you to do a quick wrap up.
Thank you, Rita. All right. I was expecting that, but I just wanted to pick up on the point about cost effectiveness of community facilitators versus staff, because that's one of the areas where there was a lot of sort of discussion when we looked at different programs. First off, to say there is no clear evaluation or data about this in terms of cost effectiveness, but a lot of search for the best way to put people in place who have the right capacity, but that isn't astronomical in cost. And so there's a lot of enthusiasm about using community coaches, but at the same time concern about the capacity they have. And so weighing up the need to pay people a higher salary for higher capacity and educational skills versus lower cost, but possibly less technical and soft skills. So Rita, if you're saying you're doing some work on evaluating this, I think that would be a study very well received, because it's a clear gap in the evidence we have where there is a great need for the evidence. And just a final thing to say for me is it's been really interesting to hear all these different examples from the 3 different countries, also the state of the evidence. My main takeaway is something that we'd already seen in the review, but that was reinforced today, is that there is a lot of different modalities that are being implemented at the same time, combined in different ways, but also a lot of need for flexibility and adaptation as contexts change, as people are learning, programs are reinventing themselves. And I think that is something to keep in mind when we think about evaluating programs, because sometimes we might get stuck in finding really static models of implementation to evaluate them, but that might go against the reality of what's needed on the ground. So there's a need for a balance there, I think.
Sure. Thanks so much. That's a very good way to wrap it up and to end our session. I enjoyed it very much. And just to conclude, would like you to take a quick poll. It's going to be showing up on your screen. It will help us improve the next sessions. And the questions are basically simple. It should take you a very short time. Would you use these ideas and materials from this session for your future work in this area? You can strongly agree, don't know, disagree, or strongly disagree. Would you use these ideas and materials from this session for your future work? I think majority of people will be using these ideas and materials. If you just joined us while we had made certain announcements, we've taken note of any other questions we may not have answered. We will be writing a quick, getting back to you for specific questions. But also I'm certain that many of you are looking forward to the publication that will be out, and they will share with you a link. So look forward to that. The presentation slides will be shared as well as the recording. So also look forward to that. As we end this, I think the poll is clear. We are going to be able to use these ideas. I enjoyed having you all here, and thanks so much for coming.